Welcome back to our channel for another explosive update on the bold and the beautiful. Today is a thrilling day to unpack the corporate chaos tearing through Los Angeles. Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us dive straight into the heart of the unprecedented drama unfolding before our very eyes. The atmosphere within the glittering, glass-walled confines of Forrester Creations has been nothing short of suffocating in recent weeks. Steffy Forrester Finnegan has been ruling the executive suite with an iron fist, establishing an authoritarian regime that has systematically crushed the creative spirits of those who do not strictly align with her couture-centric vision. For weeks, the tension has been mounting, building toward an inevitable, catastrophic eruption. Hope Logan Spencer has been pushed to her absolute breaking point, marginalized and condescended to, while her beloved Hope for the Future line was unceremoniously shelved to prioritize high fashion. Zend Forrester Dominguez, a brilliant designer with a vital pulse on a youth demographic, was left to suffer explosive meltdowns in the executive offices, his months of hard work discarded like yesterday's news. The building was a powder keg of resentment, bruised egos, and suppressed fury, waiting for a single spark to ignite a corporate inferno. At the center of this brewing storm stood Ridge Forrester, a man historically paralyzed by his inability to choose between the powerful women in his life. Ridge had cowardly attempted to play both sides of the escalating conflict, offering Brooke Logan Forrester a pathetic, original couture dress as a consolation prize, while allowing his daughter Steffy to maintain her absolute, unyielding grip on the co-CEO throne. Ridge's sheer apathy toward the youth demographic and his stubborn refusal to facilitate a proper, respectful discussion about the future of the company only served to embolden Steffy's tyrannical behavior. He foolishly believed he had successfully pacified the warring factions, willfully blind to the agonizing reality that his inaction was slowly destroying the very foundation of the fashion empire his father had built. But Forrester Creations does not belong solely to Ridge or Steffy, regardless of the titles they hold on their office doors. The ultimate authority, the visionary patriarch who built the global empire from the ground up with his own two hands, is Eric Forrester. In a dramatic, highly anticipated board meeting that will undoubtedly go down in the annals of daytime television history, Eric makes an entrance that completely shifts the tectonic plates of the fashion world. The atmosphere in the boardroom is thick with unspoken grievances and barely concealed hostility as the executives gather. Steffy sits proudly at the head of the long mahogany table, radiating the smug, entitled victory she firmly believed she had secured after crushing Brooke's recent hostile takeover attempt. She is completely, blissfully unprepared for the devastating reckoning that is about to fall heavily upon her shoulders. Eric has not been blind to the profound suffering occurring within the walls of his own company. While Ridge and Steffy obsessed over high fashion and exclusive, elite clientele, Eric has been quietly, astutely observing the devastating human cost of their narrow-minded leadership. He has seen the agonizing tears streaming down Hope's face as she sought desperate refuge at the Logan Fashion House, ready to abandon her legacy. He has felt the profound, bitter frustration radiating from Zend, his own flesh and blood, who was forced to swallow his immense pride and play a sickening corporate game just to survive the daily humiliation. Eric understands on a fundamental level that a fashion house cannot survive on legacy and historical prestige alone. It must constantly pulse with the vibrant, compassionate, and forward-thinking creativity of youth. And he realizes with heartbreaking clarity that Steffy's vindictive, deeply personal vendetta against the Logans is actively suffocating that vital creative lifeblood. When Eric finally speaks, his booming voice commands the absolute, terrifying silence of the room. He does not offer gentle reprimands, subtle hints, or diplomatic suggestions to his granddaughter. Instead, Eric delivers a scathing, incredibly public condemnation of Steffy's unchecked authoritarianism. He systematically deconstructs her recent leadership decisions, exposing them not as brilliant, necessary business strategies, but as petty, childish acts of personal retaliation. He calls out her cruel, condescending treatment of Hope, fiercely highlighting how Steffy's personal animosity has entirely blinded her to the immense financial and cultural value of the Hope for the future brand. Every single word Eric speaks is a surgical, calculated strike against Steffy's inflated ego, brutally stripping away her armor of corporate invincibility in front of the entire board of directors, leaving her completely exposed. The shockwave that ripples through the boardroom is palpable, a heavy, suffocating weight that presses down on every executive present. Steffy's eyes widen in sheer, unadulterated disbelief, her arrogant smirk evaporating instantly into an expression of profound, paralyzing horror. This is not Carter Walton offering a prophetic, easily dismissed warning, nor is it Hope delivering an impassioned, tearful plea for basic respect. This is Eric Forrester, her beloved grandfather, the man she reveres and idolizes above all others, publicly validating every single harsh criticism that has been leveled against her regime. The psychological impact of this brutal public dressing down is monumental. Steffy feels the stinging venom of his words like a physical, violent blow, a devastating slap in the face that permanently shatters her deeply ingrained sense of entitlement and absolute, unquestioned power. But Eric is not finished. His verbal condemnation is merely the terrifying prelude to definitive action. In a shocking move that leaves the entire room gasping for air and clutching their pearls, Eric utilizes his supreme, unassailable authority as the founder and patriarch of Forrester Creations to officially and unceremoniously demote Steffy. He ruthlessly strips her of the co-CEO title she has clung to with such ferocious, unyielding desperation. The absolute finality of his decree echoes off the walls, serving as a brutal death knell for Steffy's reign of terror. She is no longer the untouchable, omnipotent queen of the boardroom. She is a disgraced, humbled executive, publicly dethroned and cast aside by the patriarch of her own family. The humiliation is absolute, burning through her veins like liquid fire and leaving her completely breathless. The massive vacuum of power created by Steffy's sudden, humiliating demotion desperately demands to be filled, and Eric's choice for her immediate successor is nothing short of revolutionary. He turns his steady, determined gaze to a woman who has endured decades of brutal scrutiny, a woman who only recently suffered the agonizing humiliation of a failed corporate coup and the heartbreaking betrayal of her own daughter's trust just to protect her fragile marriage. Eric officially appoints Brooke Logan Forrester as the new co-CEO, positioning her directly alongside a stunned Ridge at the absolute pinnacle of the Forrester empire. The sheer magnitude of this monumental decision cannot be overstated. It is the ultimate, glorious vindication for Brooke, a miraculous, phoenix-like resurrection of her corporate ambitions just when she had tearfully resigned herself to utter defeat. Eric's rationale for elevating Brooke to the highest seat of power is deeply rooted in a profound, empathetic understanding of the company's current emotional and creative deficit. He eloquently and passionately argues that while Ridge possesses an undeniable, generational genius for couture design, the company desperately needs a leader with genuine compassion, profound empathy, and a fiercely nurturing spirit to cultivate and protect the next generation of talent. Brooke, despite her highly complex history and her recent hypocritical missteps, possesses an innate, undeniable ability to connect with the raw, creative struggles of the youth. Eric firmly believes that only Brooke has the emotional intelligence and the maternal, fiercely protective instincts required to salvage the brilliant careers of young minds like Zend and Hope, pulling them back from the dangerous brink of defection and absolute despair. For Hope and Zend, Eric's unprecedented, miraculous intervention is nothing short of divine corporate salvation. Hope, who had been pushed to the absolute, terrifying precipice, standing in the CEO office demanding final answers and preparing to walk away from her entire life's work to join Katie's Logan brand, suddenly finds her shattered dreams miraculously restored. The suffocating, heavy weight of Steffy's relentless oppression is instantly lifted, replaced by the empowering, exhilarating realization that her own mother is now the ultimate authority figure. Zend, who had been violently suppressing his explosive resentment and actively contemplating a bitter, revenge-fueled defection, is similarly revitalized. The youth movement at Forrester Creations, which had been pronounced dead and buried just days prior, is suddenly and gloriously resurrected, infused with a renewed sense of passionate purpose and the unwavering, public backing of the company's legendary founder. However, this dramatic, earth-shattering reshuffling of power does not bring a peaceful, harmonious resolution to Forrester Creations. It merely sets the bloody stage for a far more brutal, devastating corporate war. Steffy Forrester Finnegan is absolutely not a woman who accepts defeat with quiet, dignified grace. The agonizing public humiliation, the agonizing loss of her beloved, identity-defining title, and the sickening reality of seeing Brooke Logan elevated to her former position do not break her formidable spirit. They forge it into a terrifying weapon of pure, unadulterated vengeance. As she slowly absorbs the true magnitude of her grandfather's ultimate betrayal, a dark, terrifying, and icy resolve settles over her entire being. The initial shock in her wide eyes morphs into a cold, calculating, and murderous fury. She does not weep in defeat. She immediately begins to plot her violent return. In the immediate, tense aftermath of the explosive board meeting, Steffy makes a silent, blood-chilling vow to herself. She will absolutely not simply fade quietly into the background and submissively submit to Brooke's newfound, infuriating authority. She swears on her very life to orchestrate a ruthless, devastating, and highly calculated corporate coup that will violently overthrow both her grandfather and her despised stepmother. Steffy's brilliant, strategic mind begins to race at 1,000,000 miles an hour, formulating a complex strategy to reclaim her stolen throne by any means necessary. She is entirely willing to scorch the earth, to ruthlessly leverage every dark secret, every hidden alliance, and every single ounce of her considerable Forrester influence to tear down the new, fragile regime. Her burning desire for revenge entirely eclipses all logic and reason, transforming her from a stubborn, opinionated executive into a dangerous, highly unpredictable adversary who will stop at absolutely nothing to restore her perceived birthright. Caught squarely in the terrifying, chaotic epicenter of this impending corporate apocalypse is Ridge Forrester. The man who desperately, pathetically tried to avoid conflict at all costs, who foolishly and naively believed he could easily pacify his ambitious wife and his headstrong daughter with empty, meaningless promises and expensive couture dresses, now finds himself entirely trapped in an inescapable, suffocating nightmare. His ultimate, paralyzing dilemma has materialized in the most agonizing, public way possible. He is now legally and professionally forced to run the global fashion empire alongside his wife, Brooke, the very woman he recently, cowardly denied the position to, while simultaneously watching in sheer horror as his beloved daughter, Steffy, descends rapidly into a dark spiral of ruthless, destructive, and all-consuming vengeance. Ridge's historical paralysis and avoidance are no longer viable survival strategies in this new, brutal landscape. He is standing precariously on the fault line of a massive, impending familial earthquake that threatens to swallow him whole. Every single business decision he makes from this point forward will be intensely scrutinized, aggressively analyzed, and mercilessly weaponized by the two incredibly powerful women he loves most in the world. If he publicly supports Brooke's compassionate, youth-driven initiatives and greenlights the revival of hope for the future, he severely risks further alienating Steffy and actively fueling the dangerous fires of her impending coup. If, however, he attempts to coddle Steffy's bruised ego or subtly undermine Brooke's newly minted authority, He risks entirely destroying his fragile marriage and directly betraying his own father's explicit public mandate. Ridge is completely, utterly paralyzed by his own historical inadequacy, a tragic coward forced to desperately navigate a deadly minefield of his own careless creation. The atmosphere within the glamorous walls of Forrester Creations has violently shifted from suffocating, passive-aggressive tension to active, open, and bloody warfare. The battle lines have been drawn with absolute, terrifying, and unmistakable clarity. On one side stands the new, compassionate, and forward-thinking regime championed by Eric and led fiercely by Brooke, fighting valiantly to nurture the creative soul of the youth demographic and fiercely protect the legacy of the hope for the future brand. On the opposing side stands a deeply wounded, fiercely entitled, and incredibly dangerous Steffy Forrester, armed to the teeth with a burning, unquenchable desire for revenge and the ruthless, blinding ambition to reclaim her stolen crown at any cost to the company or her family. This is no longer just a petty boardroom disagreement over fashion lines, budget allocations, or demographic targeting. It is a brutal, unforgiving battle for the very soul and future of the Forrester family legacy. Steffy's impending, shadowy coup threatens to violently tear the family apart in profound ways that may never, ever be repaired. The deep-seated generational trauma, the decades-old blood-soaked rivalries between the Forresters and the Logans, and the deeply entrenched, festering resentments have all violently converged into this single, explosive, and unprecedented storyline. Will Brooke be able to wield her immense new power effectively and fairly? Or will the crushing pressure of Steffy's relentless, calculated sabotage ultimately break her spirit? Will Eric's fragile health and legendary legacy survive the brutal, unforgiving civil war he has inadvertently ignited with his bold intervention? And what, ultimately, will become of Ridge, the paralyzed man caught helplessly in the crossfire of the fierce women who entirely define his existence? As the metaphorical dust slowly begins to settle on this historic, game-changing board meeting, one thing is absolutely, undeniably certain. The glamorous landscape of the bold and the beautiful will never, ever be the same again. The corporate and emotional stakes have never been higher. The deeply buried emotions have never been more raw and exposed, and the dramatic, suffocating atmosphere has reached an absolute fever pitch. The loyal viewers are buckling in for a turbulent storyline of truly epic cinematic proportions, a heartbreaking Shakespearean tragedy of absolute power, shocking betrayal, and fractured family loyalty playing out beautifully against the glamorous, high-stakes backdrop of Los Angeles high fashion. The thrilling days ahead will undoubtedly be filled with secret, whispered alliances, shocking, devastating betrayals, and explosive, glass-shattering confrontations as Steffy's ruthless, cold-blooded